The fascinating world of the trillions of microbes living in and on our bodies and how they affect our health, from emotions to reflexes, is the subject of our next panel. Let's meet two women who run leading companies in the field. One is a startup that uses big data and citizen science to understand the human microbiome, and another that is a major producer of a food product that works to keep our guts healthy. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jessica Richman and Julie Smolyansky. Hello. Okay, so according to one recent headline, gut bugs are hot. It was a good headline. It wasn't mine.
It's good that they've evolved for, millions of years to be hot at this precise moment.
It's apparently it's a thing now. So venture capital investment in microbiome companies has grown at a faster rate than overall venture capital funding. From 2011 through 2015, funding in microbiome firms soared 458% to $114.5 million. It's been up this year as well, despite overall venture funding being down. So I want to understand why from both of you, but let's start with you, Jessica. You are sequencing poop, right?
Yes,
or
among
as
other
it's
things.
known less colloquially, stool samples. So why, and why is this hot?
Yeah, so we actually sequence 5 sites. So we do the nose, mouth, skin, gut, which is poop, and genitals. Those were chosen.
The most,
the hottest one. So. And it is actually the highest one. So we sequenced those 5 sites. We've been doing this for 4 years now. We have the largest data set in the world of microbiomes, over almost 100,000 samples, which is orders of magnitude greater than other data sets. And what we do with this data, whether it's poop or the other sites, is create useful products from it. The mission of the company is to take the science of the microbiome, which when we started in 2012 was really in its infancy. It was just at the end of this huge government project, the NIH Human Microbiome Project, and we wanted to take that and turn it into something useful as soon as possible. And in 4 years, we've been able to take it from, at that time, less than 1,000 microbiomes had ever been sequenced in the world. And we were able to take it from there to having a clinical product, which we just launched yesterday as part of Fortune Brainstorm Health, that doctors can prescribe for their patients. It's paid for by insurance, and it helps you better understand your gut for people who have chronic gut conditions.
So using, when it comes to fecal matter in particular, that's not a new idea.
Yeah. So what's the current paradigm is to do culture-based testing. So basically, the doctor takes a sample, you test for one thing, and then you say, oh, I guess that's not there. Okay, let's test for the next thing. I guess that's not there. But with sequencing, and we do this on the Illumina sequencer. I know you had someone from Illumina here yesterday. What sequencing allows you to do is a really broad-based analysis of what's in the microbiome. So you don't just test for one thing at a time. You test for everything that has DNA in it, all at the same time. So we find, with this particular test, we find 28 targets. We're adding sort of additional versions of the test. We'll add more targets to that. And it lets you do this sort of mass survey of what's going on in the microbiome. What it also lets you do is do that really easily. The collection techniques are really simple. You just swab your toilet paper in the case of the gut, or you swab your nose or your mouth in the case of the other sites, or wherever you're swabbing. And you can use that with a really easy, simple collection procedure to understand all the DNA of the organisms, of the microbial organisms that are there. Currently, we use a specific marker gene to detect genes that, organisms that have that marker, but as the test, as we iterate on the test, you'll be able to do a survey of all the DNA of all the organisms that are in the microbiome.
And this is a home kit that you're looking at?
It's a home kit, yeah. Okay. It's another point too, yeah, is that, and also it's, not to get too graphic, the collection technique is really simple and easy and not gross in the least, unlike current kits where you basically poop into a bowl and then scoop it out with a spoon. It's not great.
Okay.
So, yeah, so anyways, what's interesting about this though is that we were able to use big data techniques to, as we've all talked about using big data in healthcare, the way we've applied that is to build this big data set of microbiomes and then use data science techniques. That's my background. I have a PhD in applied math. Use data science techniques to take that data and make better tests, essentially, than you could make before.
So I want to understand a little bit better what we can actually do with that data, what you're hoping to do with it. But Julie, just to real quick, probiotics, not a new concept either, but explain what you guys do and sort of what's new there.
Sure. So probiotics are the hottest thing happening in the food industry and in consumers' ability to really empower themselves and take control of their own health. Probiotics have existed for over 2,000 years. Actually, recent archaeologists found that it's possible that probiotics in cultured and fermented dairy foods existed 4,000 years ago when mummies were actually buried with curdled milk and cultured and fermented dairy. So this is something that's really ancient that our ancestors consumed and has a ton of folklore associated with it. Kefir, specifically the product that we make in the United States, that we've been making for over 30 years and have really been leading and pioneering the effort of bacteria and talking about food and bacteria and in our food and on our bodies and in our bodies. It's always been associated with good health and good feeling. And actually, the region where kefir was discovered or really started is an area that's the locals lived to over 100 years old. And so there's been an association of longevity and immunity and prevention associated with consuming cultured dairy. It's something that's been passed down word of mouth, generation to generation. Right now, the science is catching up to this folklore. It's literally catching up and telling us what we've always known, is that our gut feeling, our gut literally is controlling our entire body. Now, thanks to the work of Dr. Jessica, we are, and so many others in this room, we're actually starting to understand that we have a second brain in the gut, and that the gut produces like 95% of our serotonin for the brain. We are literally discovering that we feel better when we consume probiotics and cultured dairy products like kefir. And we can literally change our health by something that's so simple like eating properly, eating well. This is completely new. We've always known that digestion and immune system was something that was being benefited by kefir. Elie Metchnikoff won the Nobel Prize in 1908 for this work. But the mental health piece is completely new. So that's fascinating, and that's one of the reasons why probiotics are now booming, and it'll blossom to a $50 billion industry. 70% of that's going to be in dairy food.
Wow. So there is a lot of really interesting research taking place. There's a project that focuses on children with autism and testing for their microbiome and the differences there. What can these kind of research projects tell us? I mean, it's still kind of early days, but where do you hope that this goes as more and more data is collected?
It's a really good question. So we work with over 1,000 researchers around the world. As part of the White House Microbiome Initiative, we're giving away over $1 million in grants to researchers. So some of these they're in a wide array of areas. Some of them are in mental health. We're doing a study with University of Oxford, actually, on which is where I got my PhD, in personality in the microbiome. There are studies of depression in the microbiome, anxiety, even relationships in the microbiome, like how that might affect, whether or not our microbes are in sync. Does it have an effect? Some of these are very exploratory and may turn out not to mean anything at all, and some of them might mean a lot. In the case of autism, the work that I'm familiar with is about figuring out, are there different, it's known that there are gut symptoms that frequently co-occur with autism, and the question is, are those a cause? Are those an effect? Are there different types of autism that you can detect by looking at different types of gut symptoms and different types of gut microbiome characteristics? So it's a really exciting area. We know that there's a connection. The question is sort of bringing that, and this is sort of our focus as a company, is bringing that to something of value that patients and doctors can actually use that's part of the healthcare system. I hope that there will be something like that soon.
Are you seeing, I mean, from the consumer side of things, you talked about the science sort of catching up to some of the potential that's there and starting to tap into it. Obviously, from a product marketing, aspect too, we're seeing so many companies jumping into the space. Do you think consumers' awareness of what this all means is catching up in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I think that consumers are hearing about it quite a bit. Like, you can't pick up a news outlet right now without learning about probiotics or hearing about this right now. But I think consumers are really confused in terms of where should they be buying their probiotics, what kinds, what should they be eating, what's effective, what's not.
I think you mentioned it being in like potato chips and all sorts of products
it's
now, right?
Literally
We were
going
talking about
in
this last
everywhere.
night. Yeah, we were talking about this last night. Yeah, sorry.
So
Is that effective?
well, I'm going to say no. I mean, the thing is that what we know that research shows that the delivery system is also really important, and that even the environment of having kefir and the bacteria in a dairy source is really effective and actually can survive the entire digestive process. But there is so much confusion out there. So I really, I can appreciate the consumer's frustration. One thing that we're really excited about is a partnership with Lady Gaga and Born This Way, her foundation, Born This Way, to understand the experiences of youth and where are they in terms of understanding the food choices that they're making and how that impacts their mental health. So we're really trying to understand, are young people, do they have this kind of food accessible? Are they able to access it? Do they know that it impacts their mental health and mood and stress and anxiety? And where can we, as a leader in food manufacturing, come in and supplement and help them access that?
Okay, yeah. That's probably the first time we brought up Lady Gaga on stage at a health conference. From your perspective, what are you seeing in terms of consumer interest? I mean, there are so many different home kits for testing so many different things now. How do you guys plan to get the word out, and what are you seeing so far?
It's a really good question, because it sort of leads in the idea of the consumerization of healthcare that we're talking about in general. The old paradigm, paternalistic paradigm of, doctor, you are a subject or an object that your doctor acts upon rather than an agent in your own healthcare. Is just dying, and people are taking much more control of their own health, whether it's through healthy food and nutritional supplements, or whether it's through, wanting to get lab tests themselves and see their own results, which surprisingly wasn't common until just a few years ago when it was mandated by the Affordable Care Act. So sort of moving so there's kind of a union among the consumer, the patient, the user. All of these things are really just us, and they're all kind of coming together to allow us to be empowered to understand our health better. So in terms of Ubiome, we have the Ubiome Explorer Kit, which is available to anyone. We're very restricted in what we can say. It mostly talks about diet and lifestyle. We don't talk about any medical conditions, because the FDA doesn't like companies to go directly to consumer and give that kind of information. So that's part of the motivation for us to set up our clinical lab. It's now CAP accredited, which is sort of this elite laboratory qualification for labs. The top 2% of labs in the world have it. And we just released some results on our tests that are available for anyone to see. You can find them in bioRxiv. And kind of moving to that clinical paradigm allows us to have tests ordered by doctors, paid for by insurance, that we then can give more information to the patient. But we still haven't lost our philosophical approach of wanting to, empower the patient, to have the citizen scientists do research. This is kind of why I started this and why we were doing this in the first place, was to put the consumer at the center of the process and let people have their own information, let them do what they want with it, and let them, use that information to have better health care for themselves. There's a lot of regulatory steps that you have to go through on the medical side, and we've done all of those, but still philosophically and I guess emotionally even, we are connected to this idea of having the patient the patient, consumer, user, us at the center of the process.
Okay, questions for Julie and Jessica? Please raise your hand. You have a microphone coming to you. Can you just say your name and company, please?
Hi, my name is Meg Noe. I work with Allergy Amulet, and this is a question for Julie. So we obviously work in the food allergy space. I have personally children with food allergies, and we give them daily probiotic because there are certain bacteria that can be beneficial potentially. My question is, with having dairy intolerances specifically, are there any live and active bacteria cultures or strains that don't involve dairy that have seemed to be beneficial?
There's different things out there that, you can kind of stumble on to. The issue is that will it survive the entire digestive process and the acidity that is in the stomach? So it's a hard thing, because we don't even know what we don't know about the gut and how everybody has different bacteria and reacts differently. Like, we'll at some point understand our own individual bacteria and which actual probiotic we should be taking, and it will get very customized over time, but science, again, needs to catch up there. I will say in terms of intolerance, the studies show that those who are intolerant, lactose intolerant specifically, can tolerate a fermented dairy product, and it goes through the entire process, and they'll have actually a reduction in digestive issues. So if that's a concern, that really you could take that one away. So but really what we know is that the fermented cultured dairy product is the best place to get that probiotic through. Now we are launching a probiotic supplement in a pill form because there's still people that want that extra supplement, or for whatever reason they've heard something and they want to have a non-dairy source. But that's why it's so important that we reach out and really empower consumers and doctors and nutritionists with all this kind of information so that they can clear the fog.
Another question?
And just a related question.
Can you introduce yourself? Sorry?
Sure. My name's Abigail Barnes, and I work with Meg at Allergy Amulet. So there are a number of theories out there as to why the incidence rate for food allergies has skyrocketed. There's the hygiene hypothesis, there's genetics, and then one of the prevailing theories is that something's going on in our gut, that either chemicals in our food, possibly GMOs, that is affecting our gut and subsequently affecting our immune system. So I just was curious if you had any insight on that, or if there have been any recent developments on that front.
Yeah, those are all things that we agree with and also believe that's happening. I mean, the way that food is processed, our modern lifestyle, our overuse of antibiotics, even just medicinally, and in our food system, all of those things are creating like this fight or flight response in our own bodies. It's like our bodies are literally fighting themselves, and these crazy, allergies and ADHD and things that we never had are off the charts now. And we do, I think both of us really believe that the microbiome and the gut and that diversity of bacteria is what's critical and is going to be the key puzzle piece to fixing some of these things, and really, kind of helping this medical system that's completely on a runaway train. I mean, $300 trillion that we're spending on our medical system is not sustainable, and it's only going to get worse. So where can we intervene with these really simple, easy, low-cost, low-risk interventions? Going back to how we ate as, cavemen a long time ago is kind of probably the best scenario.
So maybe I'll add on to that, and to address your earlier question also. So one of the indications for the clinical tests that we have, and one of the things that we also do in the Explorer product is to tell you what the balance of beneficial bacteria you have in your gut is. So if you're taking probiotics or prebiotics or making dietary changes to reduce inflammation, we can tell you, are they working? Does your gut actually have the bacteria that you're taking in it? So are they growing there? That's one of the primary use cases of the test, is sort of ruling out infection and then looking at, are the interventions that you're taking having a positive impact on your beneficial commensal bacteria?
I also think it's important to have like the diversity. So it's
Yeah,
not just like one thing. Like
That's
it's
right.
not one pill that you're taking, but
That's
it's
right.
like, let me put kimchi in and all the different kinds of
That's a really good point. So
cabbage
we test for diversity. We test for specific probiotic bacteria that are, specific commensal and beneficial bacteria, to define it more precisely.
The FDA is listening.
Right. I mean, I want to be precise about what I'm saying here. But yeah, no, absolutely. There's a real need to better understand what those things are. And then in terms of allergies, there are a lot of hypotheses. There's one interesting study where they showed that children develop more allergies if they're not exposed to a variety of microbes when they're younger. When they're infants, they develop them when
C-section.
Yeah, or through C-section. There's a lot of research on this, but I think that we kind of know a lot of things that we can try to do to prevent, and then we can use something like ubiome tests to figure out if those things are working to some extent. But deciding on causality is something that I think will take a little bit longer.
All right, we do need to wrap up. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm glad we did this before lunch, not after, right? Thank you
Thanks
both.
a lot.
Thank
So good
you.
to meet you.